What was the War of the Eight Princes? The War of the Eight Princes was also known as the Rebellion of the Eight Kings, as well as the Rebellion of the Eight Princes. It was a series of coups and civil wars that occurred in China amongst its kings and princes from 291 until 306 AD during the Western Jin dynasty. One of the key points of these conflicts occurred due to the dying wishes of Emperor Wu being fulfilled, in that his developmentally disabled son was placed into his hereditary role as emperor. The name of the series of conflicts was derived from the biographies of the eight princes collated in chapter 59 of the Book of Jin. The title, The War of the Eight Princes, is actually a misnomer in itself. Rather than one continuous conflict, it was periods of peace broken by short and intense periods of conflict. At no point were all of the eight princes in question on one side or other of the fighting. The initial conflict that led up to the coalition against Sima Lun in 301 was not in effect a war, more a series of political differences and coup d'etat. The literal Chinese translation is known as the Disorder of the Eight Kings and may well be a more accurate description. The War of the Eight Princes seriously weakened and finally led to the end of the Western Jin dynasty, as well as far-reaching consequences felt throughout China. The power of the Sima family helped establish the state of Shaowei during the Three Kingdoms period prior to the rise of the Jin dynasty. The conflict between the princes arose over who should hold overall control when Emperor Hui was appointed leader. His disability meant he was easily manipulated by those around him. The conflict has also been described as a deadly game of chess played out by the Empress Jiananfeng and others, as periods of armed conflict were interspersed with subtle plots and manipulation. The eight princes were Sima Yong, Prince of Hejian, grand uncle to Emperor Wu; Sima Jiong, Prince of Qi, cousin of Emperor Hui; Sima Yue, Prince of Donghui, cousin of Emperor Wu; Sima Ai, Prince of Changsha, son of Emperor Wu; Sima Ying, Prince of Chengdu, son of Emperor Wu; Sima Lun, Prince of Zhao, son of Sima Yi; Sima Liang, Prince of Runan, son of Sima Yi; Sima Wei, Prince of Chu, son of Emperor Wu. All eight of the princes had become known for their temperament or characteristics. Sima Wei was noted for his being quick-tempered, Sima Liang for his honor and chivalry, Sima Lun for his being the usurper of the throne, Sima Ying for his governance, Sima Ai for his courage and administration, Sima Yue for his bravery and tenacity, Sima Jiong for his arrogance, and Sima Yong for his being clever and resourceful. The story of the eight princes can be found in volume 59 of the Book of Jin, which is also known as the history of the Jin dynasty. By the end of the war, all but one of the eight princes had died, along with thousands of others, with more uprooted from their homes and left homeless, with the kingdom they fought for in ruins. In the end, the result of the blood spilled and suffering endured saw the Western Jin taken over by the nomadic Xiongnu people, with those that fled south to form the Eastern Jin dynasty. The War of the Eight Princes is considered by many historians to have been one of the bloodiest episodes in Chinese history, and a lesson to be learned as the conflict arose out of greed by those involved in attempts to further their personal positions of power. The rise of the Sima clan. The Han dynasty has succeeded the first imperial dynasty of the Qin and had been steadily weakened after 105 AD due to various problems, one of those being the emperor's isolation from the people, another being costly wars against the Xianbei nomadic people further to the north. The northern armies of the frontier were more loyal to their commanders than they were to the emperor, and this loyalty became stronger as the conflicts with the Xianbei continued to claim an increasing number of Chinese soldiers. In one incident, a Xianbei ambush in 177, 3/4 of the Chinese contingent were killed. Despite these losses, the emperor Lingdi insisted the war continue and the peasant population paid in the form of lives lost as well as in being heavily taxed to cover the cost of the war. The burden on the peasant population was already high due to problems caused by floods and famine. Several landlords, unable to collect taxes from their local population, denied the opportunity to earn a living, deserted their villages, taking their people to other locations they then fortified. Many others, unable to move, were left to vent their frustration, which later manifested itself in revolts such as the Yellow Turban Rebellion of 184 AD. This rebellion, or at least the degree of support it claimed, took the emperor by surprise, and he acted quickly by giving additional power to regional governors, instructing them to raise armies and deal with the problems as they arose. The revolt was initially crushed, but by this time those governors had themselves become warlords with their own sizable army and now fought one another for additional territory and power. The fall of the Han dynasty led to a chaotic period known as the Three Kingdoms, those three kingdoms being Cao Wei, Eastern Wu and Shu Han, with the three of them clashing with each other during the 60 years of its existence. Sima Yi was both chancellor and co-regent of the state of Cao Wei, but after a coup in 249 he assumed full political and military control. A great strategist, Sima Yi had been responsible for ensuring Cao Cao remained in control of Cao Wei through military victories and skillful political doctrines. Sima Yi also ensured his son Sima Shi and after him Sima Zhao retained those levels of power and control. The Sima family was the power behind the government, but the emperor was still from their rival clan, the Cao. Sima Zhao's son Sima Yan convinced the then emperor Cao Huang to abdicate in his favor. He then created the Jin dynasty and took the throne as Emperor Wu of Jin. Background to the Troubles. At some point shortly after Sima Yan became emperor, the Xianbei had been defeated and another group of nomadic people came into focus. The Xiongnu had begun raiding the Yellow River Basin from around 280 AD and little was done to stop these periodic raids. Those that could have mounted a defense did not have the authority to raise an army, and by the time the matter was brought to the attention of the emperor, the raiders had safely returned to their own territory. Emperor Wu, aware of problems of control over the nomadic tribes from the Han Dynasty era, was largely through the emperor being isolated from his people and the military. In an attempt to avoid any future problems of a similar nature, Emperor Wu appointed 27 of his relatives as princes, giving them their own kingdoms, each with its own army of no greater than 5,000 men. This policy, he believed, would provide maximum stability, as every kingdom was under the direct control of a family member who would remain loyal to him. Any enemy warlords would be eliminated without fear of them marching towards his capital, and peasant revolts could be easily quelled by the princes in that region. This plan went fine on paper, but in practice not so. Peasants found they suffered more as they were conscripted into the armies of each prince, and each prince cared more about his own power and kingdom than he did for the people under his control. These problems were exacerbated upon the death of Emperor Wu and his insistence that his son, Sima Zong, despite being mentally incapable of ruling the country, be his successor. Emperor Wu had two sons by his first wife, Yang Yan. Sima Gui died young, and Sima Zong was made the crown prince. Sima Zong was described as being weak and incapable. However, such a prognosis today would be that he was developmentally disabled. Sima Zong was capable of functioning at a rudimentary level, but he struggled with basic conversation and had little to no decision-making skills. His advisors called Emperor Wu's attention to his son's disability, but he ignored that advice. An arranged marriage was conducted between Sima Zong and Jia Nanfeng, the daughter of Jia Chong, a long-standing friend of the family, court-appointed duke and advisor to the emperor. Jia Nanfeng has been characterized as conniving, jealous, petty and ruthless, and she showed an amazing talent for duplicity at an early age. When she was 14, she married the 12-year-old Sima Zong. At this time, written inquiries were written to his son from Emperor Wu, questioning his son's mental ability and whether he could succeed him or not. However, his son did not answer those questions, as all responses were written by either Jia Nanfeng or her servants, responses which impressed the emperor and dispelled any misgivings he may have shown towards his son's capabilities. Emperor Wu's first wife died in 274, and he then married Yang Ze, the daughter of his advisor Yang Jun. Yang Jun was also the regent for Sima Zong. When Emperor Wu died in 290, Sima Zong became Emperor Hui of Jin, but incapable of ruling the empire, he quickly became a very valuable pawn in a game of seizing and holding onto power. Scheming by Jia Nanfeng. Yang Ze, the widow to the late emperor and stepmother to the new emperor, initially exerted the greatest hold over Hui and capitalized on this by empowering her father's position as regent. Jia Nanfeng, as a new empress, found this to be intolerable, and she requested Sima Liang and Sima Wei to come to the capital to assist her. When Sima Wei arrived in Luoyang with his army, Yang Jun was accused of treason by Jia Nanfeng. As harsh as this may sound, it was actually correct, as Yang Jun had earlier changed Emperor Wu's will to profit himself and enlarge his position. Adopting her old method of writing under her husband's name, Jia Nanfeng denounced Yang Jun and ordered Sima Wei to attack the soldiers under Yang's command. Meanwhile, Yang Jun's daughter Ze wrote her own edicts denouncing Jia Nanfeng and requesting help. After the defeat of Yang Jun's army and his execution, Yang Ze was accused of treason and placed under house arrest, seemingly starved to death. Thousands of Yang family members and their supporters were then rounded up and executed. Sima Liang took control in an attempt to keep the peace, but an earlier refusal by him to topple the Yangs led to his downfall. Jia Nanfeng forged an imperial edict that accused Sima Liang of treason, and Sima Wei carried out his execution. Jia Nanfeng then claimed that Sima Wei had forged the edict and that Sima Liang had in fact been innocent. Sima Wei lost face, was deserted by his followers and later executed. The downfall of Jia Nanfeng. The manipulation of Jia Nanfeng had worked as she had hoped, but there was another obstacle in her way to achieving complete control: Sima Yu, her stepson. Emperor Wu had given Sima Zong a concubine, Xia Ju, to teach his son about sex, and Sima Yu was their son and the legitimate crown prince, since Jia Nanfeng had until that time been unable to produce a male heir. Jia Nanfeng invited Sima Yu to the palace for a feast, and upon getting him drunk had him write out a plan to kill Emperor Hui and herself, and claim himself as emperor. This evidence was then presented to her husband, and she demanded Sima Yu be executed. Emperor Hui refused to kill his son, and instead had him demoted to the status of a commoner. Sima Lun of Zhao was one of Jia Nanfeng's closest confidants, but he had actually been biding his time to destroy her. He suggested to Jia Nanfeng that she killed Sima Yu before he had a chance to plead his case to his father and possibly exposing her. Jia Nanfeng took this advice, killed her stepson, but then was surprised by Sima Lun's edict accusing her of treason and murder. She was forced to commit suicide, her family and supporters were slaughtered, and Emperor Hui was placed under house arrest. Sima Lun then declared himself emperor in the year 301. The War of the Princes. Sima Jiong, Sima Ying and Sima Yong then joined forces against Sima Lun. His armies were defeated and he was forced to commit suicide. Then, in keeping with the policy of the day, all his supporters and their families were slaughtered. Emperor Hui was restored to power, with Sima Jiong having all the powers of emperor while acting on the behalf of Emperor Hui. But Sima Ying and Sima Yong were rewarded with high positions to hopefully keep them content. Sima Yong, however, was not content and launched a plot to place him in power. He invented a story that Sima Ai was himself plotting to overthrow Sima Jiong in the hope that Sima Ai would be destroyed and Sima Jiong's forces would be weakened to enable Sima Yong to easily take control. Sima Ai proved to be a more formidable opponent, and having first evaded the army of Sima Jiong, he counterattacked and killed Sima Jiong. When Sima Yong arrived at the capital of Luoyang, he, to his surprise, found Sima Yong in control as emperor, acting in the best interests of Hui. Sima Yong took his time to exact any repercussions on Sima Ai and eventually allied himself with Sima Ying to depose Ai. Sima Ai was eventually captured and killed by Sima Yong. Power and wealth was then shared in the capital between Sima Yu, Sima Ying and Sima Yong, but Sima Yu became jealous of the wealth acquired by Sima Ying and managed to convince Emperor Hui that Ying was disloyal and planning a coup. Yu and Hui joined forces against Ying but were defeated, and Emperor Hui found himself a prisoner of Ying. Sima Ying took his prisoner to Luoyang, which was at that time under the control of Sima Yong. Sima Yu later attacked and defeated Sima Yong in a battle in 305. Both Sima Ying and Sima Yong were executed the following year, along with their supporters and families. Emperor Hui died in 307. His most likely cause of death was through poisoning, and Sima Yu was the only one of the 8 leading princes still alive. But with Emperor Hui's death, the title of emperor went to the next blood relative, which was Sima Che, the youngest son of Emperor Wu and one of his concubines. The fate of Sima Yu was resolved in 311 when he died from unknown causes, but the amount of problems he caused for Emperor Hui, Sima Che, the most probable cause was that he was poisoned. Conclusion. After the death of Sima Yu in 311, Luoyang was taken by the Xiongnu leader Liu Kong, who executed Sima Che in 313. Sima She's successor, Sima Yu, or Emperor Min, surrendered to the Xiongnu in 316 and was then executed 2 years later. The rapid decline of the Western Jin from 300 to 304 gave rise to an unruly period known as the 16 Kingdoms from 304 until 439, during which time foreign barbarian tribes, including the Xiongnu, established their own domains within northern China. The survivors of the Western Jin's royal court were forced to flee and establish the Eastern Jin in 317 at Jiankang, but this was just as rife with corruption as the old regime had been. Furthermore, they met resistance from the clans already established in that region, who were used to their own forms of government. The Eastern Jin managed to retain their system of rule until 420, when they were deposed by Liu Yu and the Liu Song dynasty was formed. The War of the Eight Princes was a period of brutality on a par with the Three Kingdoms as to the lack of regard for the common people each faction claimed they represented. The aristocracy of both periods used the people as fodder in their quest for power in often senseless battles rather than use that productivity to improve the lives of those living at that time, instead of the senseless destroying of lives. It was a period of selfish lust for power by the main antagonists, and while both periods have been romanticized in fiction and literature, very few Chinese peasants in those eras would have found romance in their fight for survival. That is all for this video. If you have enjoyed watching and it has shown you a little detail of life here in China, then your subscribing to my channel would mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching. Make sure you click on the link. To the next video, and until the next time, goodbye for now.